The MLB Draft Lottery is going to be coming up as the MLB season is over. And, the season's over. That means these standings are set. So now I feel a little bit more comfortable being able to go over this draft lottery with everyone. Share what it is, what are the rules for it, who has what odds to get what pick, and how it's going to work. Very excited to dive into this. So let's get straight into it. You're watching Bleacher Brawls. My name is Derek, and let's get straight to it. Well, the perfect place to start when covering the draft lottery is, what is it? Essentially, it is going to determine the draft order for the 2023 MLB draft and every draft after on. Obviously, there'll be a draft lottery every single year after the season to determine the draft order for the next draft. This year's draft is expected to take place during the winter meetings. The date I've heard thrown around was like December 6th. But I don't know if that's confirmed or not yet, but the winter meeting, so sometime in December. Now, what does the draft lottery, obviously it sets draft order, but how does it do that? The MLB Draft Lottery will have 6 picks in the lottery, the first through 6th pick. What they will do is they'll do a lottery for the first overall pick. They'll get the winner, obviously. Then they'll do one for the second overall pick, which the first winner for the first one isn't included in. They'll get that winner. Then they'll do the lottery for the third overall pick. Obviously, the first 2 aren't included, and so on and so forth up until the 6th pick. When they do the lottery for the 6th pick, that is the last one. And then after that, after the 6th pick, the draft order falls into place based on every team's record in the regular season. So that's how it's going to work. And the lottery obviously will be done every single year. We'll get into more of the rules of the lottery a little bit later, because we'll get into that later. But the draft lottery odds are, I will leave a link to this in the description. Tankathon.com, their website, have all the draft lottery odds on it. The top 30 teams all have the same odds for the top 6 picks. Washington, Oakland, and Pittsburgh all have 16.5% odds at the number 1 pick, 15.6% odds at the second pick, 14.5% of the third pick, 13.2% odds for the 4th pick, 11.6% odds at the 5th pick, and 9.7% odds at the 6th pick. It changed a little bit after the 7th pick, because Washington, the furthest they can fall is the 7th pick. Oakland, they can only fall to the 8th pick at the furthest, and Pittsburgh at the furthest can fall to the 9th pick. Now, you look at some of the teams at the bottom. Obviously, the highest percentage is 16.5% for 3 teams. Then then Cincinnati at 13.2% for the first pick. Then Kansas City at 10% for the first pick. All the other teams are under 10%. Those are the top 5 teams. The bottom 5 teams, actually, I'll do the bottom 6. Milwaukee has the lowest percent odds as being the best record team that didn't make the playoffs. They have the worst odds at the number 1 pick at 0.2%. And the Orioles have a 0.4%. San Francisco has a 0.5%. The White Sox at 0.6%. The Red Sox at 0.8%. And the Twins at 0.9%. Those are all the teams under 1% odds for the number 1 pick. I'll use the Red Sox as my example. Obviously, Bleacher Brawls will be Red Sox and Yankees. So I'll use the Red Sox as my example. The Red Sox have a 0.8% chance of the first pick, 0.9% at the second pick, 1% chance of the third pick, 1.2% at the 4th pick, 1.4% at the 5th pick, 1.7% chance of getting the 6th pick. So for them to get one of those top 6 picks, it's a total of a percent chance of under 10% total. It's very unlikely they get any of those picks, but it's not impossible, right? The Red Sox could get the number 1 pick. Is it impossible? No, it's not impossible. Is it probable? No, it's not probable. It's very improbable, but you never know. It still could happen. The Red Sox are favored to get the 14th overall pick at 71.9%. They cannot fall anywhere from 7 to 13 in the draft lottery. They have the 14th pick. Oh, sorry, no, the 13th pick. They can fall at 13. They can't fall from 7 to 12. The 13th pick, they have a 71.9% chance of, an 18.7% chance of the 14th pick, 1.2% chance of the 15th pick, 0.6% chance of the 16th pick, and then a greater than 0.0% chance at 17 and the 18th pick, but it's so small, it's essentially probably not going to happen. Now, what the draft lottery does essentially is giving every team a chance. You can't just tank every single year and get the number 1 overall pick every single year. We'll get into that a little bit more later with the draft lottery rules and such. But essentially, um, any of these 18 teams in the draft lottery have a chance at a top 6 pick. The chances the percentage chance that you have at getting one of those picks is different, but there's still always a chance. Now, before joining, I did a simulation of a draft lottery for the MLB draft, and there are different rules. I just kind of clicked through it a couple times, obviously, and did it, and saw what I could come up with, right? And I wanted to use this one that I came up with because it shows that it's not impossible for a team to make a jump into that top 6 and, jump up high and get a solid pick. So that's why I wanted to use it. And it's a little bit of a coincidence that the Red Sox in this draft simulation have the number 1 overall pick. But I just wanted to use this one because it shows that teams can still jump up and get a top pick, right? And teams can still fall out of that top 6. So in this simulation, the Red Sox jump from 14 to the 1st overall pick. Cincinnati jumps from 4 to 2. Pittsburgh sticks at 3. Oakland falls from the 2nd pick to the 4th pick. Colorado jumps from the 8th pick to the 5th pick. Kansas City drops from the 5th pick to the 6th pick. That's a lottery. Boston, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, Oakland, Colorado, Kansas City. I'll leave the links to the draft odds page and the draft simulator page in the description, so you guys can play with that too. But I just want to use this as an example. Then Washington falls from the 1st pick to the 7th pick. That says the lowest Washington can fall, and that's why I wanted to use this as well. Had it been, Baltimore or San Fran or Chicago or Arizona getting that 1st pick, I still would use this. But I want to use this because there's a team jumping up and a team falling that has a high percent. Like Washington, they are projected out of the 1st overall pick. They cannot fall lower than 7th. They fell to 7th in this. And so essentially it doesn't guarantee that you're going to get a top 6 pick even if you have the best odds at it. And a team like Oakland could fall to the 8th pick, or Pittsburgh could fall as low as the 9th pick, although they have tied for the best odds for the 1st pick. So that's the reason I want to use this example that I have in front of me. But obviously there are different examples where, a team might not be a lot of jumps in teams, or, a team could fall pretty far. A team can fall a maximum of 6 spots. So in that situation, Washington fell 6 spots, but it doesn't have to be Washington. It's very unlikely a team will fall 6 spots, but you never know. You never know what can happen. And I think that's the beauty of the draft lottery. You can't just, I got the worst record, so I have the number 1 pick. You just can't do that anymore. Now, what that ends up doing is, with the draft lottery, you can look at it and go, now there's just, in the sense of, you don't have to be badly a top overall pick. Well, not necessarily. There's still a percent chance you don't win the lottery, obviously. But here's the thing with the draft lottery, and here's why you can't just tank year after year. In the new collective bargaining agreement, the new CBA, there are restrictions on teams that qualify for the draft lottery in consecutive seasons. Clubs that don't receive revenue sharing, so pretty much the big market teams, are ineligible to earn a lottery pick in consecutive years. So, for example, this doesn't have any effect on the 2023 draft lottery, but it could have an effect down the road. The Red Sox, let's say they get one of the top 6 picks, which is so they win one of the lotteries. If they are eligible for the draft lottery again in 2024, they could have the worst record in the league in 2023. For the 2024 draft, the 2023 draft lottery, they will be ineligible to win any of those top 6 picks in the draft lottery, meaning at best they can have the 7th overall pick. And that could play consequences on teams tanking. If you do receive revenue share, so small market teams, I'm pretty sure Pittsburgh receives, maybe not. Actually, I don't know if Pittsburgh does, but I'm going to use Pittsburgh as an example because they've been consistently bad for a while now. Pittsburgh, let's say they win one of the lotteries, get one of the top 6 picks. Even if they fall to the 6th pick this year, that's still winning one of the draft lotteries, even though they dropped 3 picks. Then in 2023, the next draft lottery comes to the 2024 draft, and they end up with the 5th pick, let's say. Now in the 2024 draft lottery, even if they have the worst record in baseball, they are not eligible to receive one of the top 6 picks because for teams that receive revenue sharing, teams that receive revenue sharing aren't permitted to receive a lottery pick for more than 2 straight years. And lottery pick is one of those top 6 picks. So essentially, when you hear in the NBA when someone says a lottery pick, it's just the teams that are eligible for the lottery. In the MLB, when they're using the term lottery pick, at least to my understanding of it, they are talking about winning the lottery, one of those top 6 picks. That's how they are. That's what it seems to me. Now, the rest of the first round after the lottery will just be based on the standings from worst record to best record up until the playoff spots, and then the playoff, and so on and so forth. For that, and then there are a couple different. The playoff teams are they're a little bit more complex, so I'm not going to get into it. At all, because some of them are way more like the playoff teams has to do with revenue sharing and yada 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 and some of the crazy stuff. I don't really want to get to it. Now, the second round and beyond. The lottery only affects the first round. In the second round and beyond, it would be just like any other year's MLB draft. The first pick in every round besides the first round now will be from the inverse of the standings. So from worst record to best record in the league. Now, so obviously there you take out the compensation picks or whatever. It goes from worst record to best record. So what that means is the Nationals, regardless of where they end up in the draft lottery, they could fall to the 7th pick. In the second round, they will have the number 1 pick in the second round, as well as the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, all the way through the 20th round. They will have the number 1 pick in each round, regardless of whether they get the number 1 pick in the draft lottery or they fall and get another pick. So essentially, the draft lottery is only affecting the first round. However, will still have a big effect. We've gone over some of the rules and some of that stuff of the draft lottery. The last thing I want to cover for this draft lottery is the effect that it could have on teams rebuilding. You cannot now just get the first overall pick one year, then the 3rd the next year, then the 2nd the next year, then back to the first overall pick, then back to the 5th, then the 5th, then the 3rd, and then your MLB team's good and whatever. You can't do that. You're gonna have to, you might be able to get the first pick one year, then the 5th pick the next year. Then at best the next year you can get the 7th pick, even if your team's bad. If you end up with the 5th worst record, you could fall as low as the 11th pick. Is that 11th pick would be very unlikely, but you could end up with like the 8th or 9th pick. And especially though, if a team has made it to where the point where they're ineligible for one of those 6 picks in the draft lottery, and they have the worst record in baseball, that's going to be very bad for them because now they're falling from the 1st pick to the 7th pick, which not only means you have a lower pick, you also have less of a bonus pool because remember, each draft spot has a set amount of money for that slot. Obviously, you can go over slot or under slot, but now as a team that, you now have less slot money, so unless you're going very under slot, but now with your 7th pick, you can't necessarily go over slot later in the draft, and it changes up some strategy. Whereas a team that maybe like the Red Sox, for example, they're only projected to have the 13th overall pick. If they jump up to the 3rd pick, for example, and now they have the 3rd pick, well, they can go under slot with the 3rd pick because they weren't expecting to pick that high anyways. They can go under slot, get a guy they like, and now they have a bunch of money to go over slot on some of the harder high school signings, the guys that will be harder to sign from out of high school, maybe even some of the harder college guys who still have a year eligibility left. And you can go overslot on some guys later in the draft because of that. You saw the Texas Rangers do this perfectly last year. Obviously, no draft lottery. They took the third overall pick, went under market for Kumar Rocker. Then they went massively overslot in the fourth round. So I forget who it was. I already forgot who they picked in the fourth round. But it could bring in some draft strategy as well. So that makes it very interesting. Now, and now the very, very last thing before we wrap this up is, do we know how this thing's going to play out? No. Is it going to be interesting? Yeah, it will be. I don't know how the MLB is going to plan on doing it. Will they have the lottery live, or will they do like the NBA draft lottery where they do it behind closed doors and then they have like a reveal show of the draft order? Who knows how they'll do it? We'll see. But the hope is that that it'll create a new way of baseball in the sense of you can't just tank for the first overall pick every year, and you have to you can't just put out a team of nobodies. Even if you don't win a game all year, you're not guaranteed the number one pick. And hopefully too, teams can make some jumps into that top five. Obviously, I'd love if the Red Sox did, but even if a team like Milwaukee, for example, somehow got lucky enough and jumped to like the sixth pick, or like that's a massive jump from 18 to 6. Like that's a massive jump. And that can revitalize a team's farm system jumping up that high. You get yourself a top prospect at that sixth spot potentially. That like it's obviously not a strategy, miss the playoffs and we can jump up to draft lottery. It's not. But there's a little bit of, hey, like we could still jump up. Also too, it's gonna affect the scouting because if you're a team that's expecting to make the playoffs and you miss, you're normally not fully in-depth scouting the top of the draft class because you don't expect to have a top pick. Now you still have to scout those guys like in depth because if you somehow jump up into that top 6 spot, let's say you jump up to the third pick and you were only scouting guys that were mid to late first rounders. Now it's like, oh crap, we gotta really, obviously the draft lottery is like 6 months before the actual draft, the MLB draft. But it's still like these guys normally you're looking at these guys for a couple of years. You're keeping tabs on them. You're not just draft year comes around and you're looking at them. You're they got these teams have kept tabs on these guys. And if they're a team that, maybe it changes the scouting, maybe not, but that'll be something. Can it change the potential scouting, a way a team scouts players as well? That's something I don't know if it will, but it's something that you never know. But it'll bring some interesting changes to the table. And I think it's only gonna make the draft more interesting as well. And I'm very excited to see it happen. And for me, hopefully the Red Sox will get it. If you're a fan of another team, hopefully you guys can get the draft lottery. Unless you're a fan of like the Orioles, who are also in the American League East, then you can just screw off. And I hope you get stuck with with that mid first round pick that you haven't had in 10 years. So yeah, that's a great place to end it though. Make sure to check out all the links in the description. Like I said, I will leave the link for the website with the draft lottery odds and the draft lottery simulator. Those are both a tankathon. So check those out if you want to look at those the in-depth lottery odds, and if you want to play around with the draft simulator, the draft lottery simulator, which I have. If you want to do that, go check that in the description. Those will be in the description. Also, all the Bleacher Brawls links will be down there, so check those out. The podcast, website, Instagram, and Twitter. On Twitter tonight, live, 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern, Thursday, October 6th, we will be doing a Twitter space, a live podcast of the Doug and Barnes Show, one of our podcasts that goes up every week. We will be discussing the wild card round, so make sure to check that out. We'll be live on Twitter. You guys can join, talk with us, get on the podcast, feature on the podcast. So make sure to join that. Make sure to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you get notified whenever we post. And that's it from Bleacher Brawls. My name is Derek. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.